It started on a freezing morning in Boulder, Colorado, 1996. The town was wrapped in Christmas lights, children's laughter still echoing from the night before. But behind one mansion's frosted windows, the laughter had stopped forever. A child, beloved and innocent, was found lifeless in her own home, a discovery that would shake America, divide families, and haunt investigators for decades. The call came in just before dawn. "We found her," the voice whispered through the phone, trembling, hollow, and unreal. Within minutes, police cars flooded the quiet neighborhood. Inside, they found the child wrapped in a white blanket, a ransom note left behind, and too many unanswered questions. No signs of forced entry. No clear suspect. Just the unbearable stillness of a mystery too dark to accept. As the investigation unfolded, what began as a desperate search for justice turned into one of the most controversial unsolved cases in modern American history. Was it a kidnapping gone wrong, or something far more sinister that had been hidden behind the polished doors of privilege? The handwriting on the ransom note. The strange behavior of those inside the house. The DNA evidence that changed everything years later. And the haunting feeling that someone, somewhere, knows the truth. Tonight, we reopen the case the world thought it knew, and uncover the disturbing reality behind the tragic death that still refuses to rest. Detectives began by analyzing every corner of the house, from the half-written ransom note left on the staircase, to the untouched snow outside that showed no footprints. Something about the scene didn't make sense. The note demanded $118,000, the exact amount of a recent work bonus received by the victim's father. Coincidence, or a clue too personal to ignore? The family claimed they had searched the entire home before calling the police, yet hours later, one of them reportedly discovered the child's body in the basement. Wrapped carefully in a blanket, with a cord and duct tape that seemed deliberately placed, not in the chaotic manner of an intruder, but with emotional precision. The basement window was broken, but the dust on the sill was undisturbed. Forensics worked tirelessly through the night. Hair samples, fingerprints, handwriting comparisons, everything pointed in conflicting directions. The ransom note, 3 pages long, appeared to have been written with paper and a pen from inside the home. Investigators wondered, how could a kidnapper calmly write such a detailed message while inside a house full of people? As the media descended, public opinion began to split. Some believed it was a break-in gone wrong. Others whispered of something darker, that the truth lay within the family itself. Every televised press conference, every facial expression, every word spoken by the grieving parents was analyzed frame by frame. And as the months turned to years, the case grew colder. Evidence was mishandled. Leads dried up. But still, one thing remained constant, that little girl's face, frozen in time, her smile haunting an entire nation. More than 2 decades later, the case file that had once gathered dust inside Boulder's archives was reopened. Technology had evolved. DNA profiling had advanced. And new eyes, fresh investigators unshackled by the political tension of the original investigation, decided to re-examine the evidence that had once been declared inconclusive. Inside a small, climate-controlled evidence room, technicians carefully extracted fibers from the child's blanket, the duct tape, and the garrote handle that had been preserved in sealed bags. A partial DNA profile emerged, faint, but powerful enough to challenge everything the public had believed. It didn't match anyone in the household. It didn't match any known suspect. But it did match an unknown male already logged in a national database from another case across the country. This discovery reignited the investigation overnight. News outlets called it a miracle, the possibility that the killer had finally left behind a trail of truth. Detectives tracked the DNA linked to an individual with a disturbing history of breaking into homes, often through basements or windows. His name, now confidentially recorded in the reopened file, led to a web of previously overlooked connections between multiple unsolved break-ins in the same region. The new suspect, who had since passed away, was never brought to trial. But forensic mapping confirmed his pattern, his timing, and his location in Colorado during the same winter of 1996. When the results were made public, the community reacted with a mixture of relief and disbelief. After decades of finger-pointing, suspicion, and pain, the revelation didn't just solve the mystery. It cleared the names of those who had been silently accused for years. The truth, though tragic, finally lifted the weight of uncertainty. The case that once symbolized America's fascination with mystery had now come full circle. When the truth about the 1996 Colorado case finally emerged, the revelation didn't bring joy, it brought a quiet kind of sorrow. The town that had lived under a shadow for decades found itself facing the weight of closure, but also guilt. They had spent years pointing fingers, spreading rumors, and speculating about innocence and guilt. Now, the silence that filled Boulder's winter air felt heavier than before. The family, once shattered by suspicion, tried to rebuild. The reopened investigation had cleared their name publicly, yet it couldn't erase the scars left behind by decades of public scrutiny. Their home, once filled with laughter, had long been sold, its new owners unaware of the ghosts that lingered within its walls. The child's bedroom, forever frozen in 1996, became a symbol of innocence lost too soon, and a reminder of how truth often arrives too late. For investigators, the case became a lesson in patience, humility, and the importance of evolving science. Many of the original detectives had retired, some even passed away, but their work, flawed as it was, laid the groundwork for a new generation of forensic analysts who now carry the torch of justice. The national media revisited the story with fresh eyes, no longer sensationalizing, but reflecting. Documentaries, podcasts, and public forums shifted the tone from scandal to empathy. The tragedy had become more than a crime, it was a mirror showing the consequences of societal obsession and the dangers of rushed judgment. The local police department created an initiative in the victim's name, a program designed to train young investigators in cold case reanalysis, ensuring that no forgotten file would ever again be left unanswered. It became a legacy born from loss. And somewhere in that same Colorado town, a small memorial was quietly placed in the local park. A single stone engraving with a child's name. No headlines, no ceremonies, just a place for reflection. Visitors often leave flowers, notes, or small paper angels. Each gesture whispers the same silent vow, you are remembered. Sometimes, the most haunting mysteries aren't those that remain unsolved, but those that are finally understood. When the truth surfaced about what happened in Colorado back in 1996, it didn't come with applause or satisfaction. It came with silence, the kind that follows years of pain, the kind that feels like both relief and regret. For those who lived through it, the revelation was more than just closure. It was a mirror, reflecting back every moment of fear, doubt, and judgment. The case had consumed not just a family, but an entire generation who grew up watching innocence collide with media spectacle. And when the dust finally settled, what remained wasn't anger, it was empathy. In the soft winter light of Boulder, snow now falls quietly on the same streets once flooded by flashing lights and cameras. The echoes of reporters' voices are gone, replaced by the faint hum of wind through bare trees. The town remembers, but gently now, not as a scandal, but as a scar that has finally begun to heal. Every unsolved case carries with it a voice, sometimes of the victim, sometimes of the truth itself, waiting to be heard. And in this story, after nearly 3 decades of confusion and speculation, that voice was finally heard. Not in a courtroom, not through a confession, but through the persistence of those who refused to let the memory fade. Justice, in this case, wasn't about punishment. It was about remembrance. It was about giving a lost child her voice back, and allowing a family, and a town, to finally breathe again. Because in the end, every mystery, no matter how cold, no matter how buried beneath time, deserves to speak. And today, through truth and through memory, it finally has. In the years that followed the reopening of the Colorado 1996 case, the world changed, technology advanced, people moved on, and yet, this story lingered. It became more than a crime, it became a lesson. A reminder that truth, no matter how long it hides, never dies. When investigators revisited the evidence decades later, they weren't just reopening a file, they were reopening wounds. But they did it because someone had to. Someone had to stand for a little girl whose voice had been drowned out by chaos and accusation. Someone had to say, her story matters. The DNA breakthroughs, the forensic reevaluations, the re-examination of statements, all of it led to a truth that had always been there, quietly waiting beneath the noise. And when it surfaced, it did not scream. It whispered, and that whisper carried more power than any verdict. For the family, justice didn't arrive in the way they once imagined. There was no single villain to point to, no dramatic courtroom scene. Instead, there was peace, fragile, imperfect, but real. The kind of peace that comes when truth, at last, is seen for what it is. And as the file was finally marked closed, resolved, the lead detective, now gray-haired and retired, placed it on the archive shelf with quiet reverence. She can rest now, he said. Not as an officer. Not as an investigator. But as a human being. That's the thing about cold cases, they're not just about solving crimes. They're about restoring humanity. They remind us that justice isn't only written in reports or verdicts. Sometimes, justice is simply remembrance. And so, as the story fades into the quiet hum of history, one truth remains: every mystery leaves behind a voice, and today, we've heard it.